The world is changing, the world's on fire. I want to do my part to inspire change.
There we go. Hello, Igniters out there. We've got another beautiful interview today in our Illuminator series. I'm Maggie Reedy, and my partner here in Ignite is Alice Van Blockland. And we've got a special guest today who definitely fits our definition of an illuminator. We see as an illuminator as a woman of a certain age who is living her life vibrantly with wisdom to share in a certain area of expertise that she has embodied and developed in the way that she lives life and shares her wisdom with others. And I can remember meeting Angela several years ago, and I didn't yet have Ignite going, but I would say that she definitely is part of that definition of an illuminator who lives her life with creativity, passion, vibrancy, connection with others that is inspiring and uplifting. And I can't wait to see how this interview unfolds today as we connect with Angela.
Yes. So today we have Angela Thurston with us. Getting tongue twisted already, and we're just starting. Just so you know, we're very informal here at Ignite. So Angela is a sacred intimacy, sex, and relationship coach. So our conversation today is going to be on those themes as Angela shares more about who she is and what she does. So thank you so much, Angela, for joining us here today.
Thank you both so much for having me. I'm really excited to dive into this conversation with you both.
Wonderful.
So one of the things that we always like to hear is what lights you up. So Angela, what is lighting you up these days? And just tell us more about that.
What lights me up? What lights me up is assisting women in creating transformation in their lives.
Wow, that's a big topic, and it really fits with Ignite transformative events. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like really working with women and couples to bring them home to themselves. Like even if it's a couple dynamic, it's really important for each individual to be connected to themselves. And it really is this journey of self-love, and sexuality is the doorway.
Wow. And what brought you to this line of work, Angela? Super curious about your own personal history and your journey.
Well, after children, probably about 5 years after having kids, I started going into really early perimenopause, and I just lost my sex drive. And my husband and I, Robert, had great sex before the kids. You know, I was always lit up and ready, and we just had beautiful connection and really great sexy escapades. And then after children and going into perimenopause, I lost all my desire to have sex. And it was having a really strong impact on our marriage because the more Robert wanted sex, the more I shut down, and I wanted to be connected emotionally, and then he would shut down. So we just got to this place of not having sex very often. And because he worked out of town, I would have duty sex because I was a stay-at-home wife and mother. So I felt it was my job. That was the part of the deal that because I wasn't making money, that it was my duty to have sex. So I would have sex with him when he came home from work because he'd be gone for 2 weeks, and then I'd have sex with him before he left, even if I didn't want to. And so, you know, resentment begins to build up. So we both were in this place of resentment. So what I actually started to do, I didn't dive right into sexuality to begin with. It was actually getting present in my body because I was so disembodied. And, you know, I have lots of trauma in I had lots of trauma in my system from my upbringing, which I was unaware of the effects that was having on me. So I just started with getting into my body and, oh, this is what it feels like in my body. And then something else would come up. And it was like, oh, then I got into feminine empowerment. What does this feel like to own being a woman? What does this feel like to be in my body as a woman in a very different way than I ever had been? And then I would always, because there's always more information when you go into the teacher or the facilitation trainings.
Mhm.
And because I was having such effects in my life, I would start taking all the trainings, and then I just started coaching women. And over the last 15, 20 years, I'm a seeker. So it's a never ending process of, then it went into sexuality, then it went to Taoist Tantra arts, and then realizing Robert and I weren't even wired the same sexually, which explained so much because I would
Mhm.
do, I'll use the Taoist Tantra arts as an example. I I came home and we would do these practices and they were really great to begin with, but then they would peter out because that's not how he was wired. So then
Mhm.
boredom would set in. And so, just over the years to this very day, I continue to look for other modalities and resources, and then I weave them all together for my life and for my client's life so that
Mhm.
now we can meet each other. But it really is about filling your own cup. And I know that sounds cliche because we use it a lot in our culture, especially when it comes to feminine empowerment. But there really is something to be said when we can travel within and feed ourselves emotionally, physically, sexually, and then we come into our relationships and partnerships in the world in a very, very different way.
Mhm.
Well,
It's
you're speaking our language for sure. We when we're when you talk about like your cup was empty and you were it was affecting your relationship in your marriage, but I think beyond that too, it was affecting everything, and you were connecting out of obligation, and there was really nothing in there to give, and so you started with being present in your body to connect with yourself before anything could transform in your life and in your relationships.
Yeah. And then the journey just continued to unfold with me realizing that I really didn't love myself. And,
Yeah.
and our sexuality is a super big part of that
Yeah.
Mhm.
in how we love ourselves and coming
Yeah.
from that place. It truly changes everything.
Yeah, and what you were speaking of, I think that's true in so many relationships, Angela, when you talk about duty sex and how we're conditioned as women to be the pleasers, to be the pacifiers, to be the givers. And Maggie and I, we use the reference of a chalice and igniting the chalice, and the chalice also representing the women's womb. And when we operate from that place and being really in touch with what is the womb, the seed of creation, right? It's not just the physical creation, but creation of all. And when that's not in a healthy place, whether it's full or half full or full of things that are like toxic or just not healthy, how that impacts every aspect of our life. So I'm really, really excited for our listeners and our viewers to hear that there's an alternative way of being where having intimacy with self and others is actually a joyful experience. So I'd love for you to say more about how you were learning about different modalities for not only yourself, but your partner. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Um, can I, because that's very big.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to share from a perspective of one of the biggest discoveries I made on this journey. And
Mhm.
because we have so much imprinting from our families, from religion, from our culture, that quite often we go through life. So this was part of what I was doing, is I was putting tips and techniques on top of trauma. So when I began looking at what I was actually putting the brakes on, it gave me a different way in. So Emily Nagoski talks about in her book, Come As You Are, the accelerator and the brakes. And it's from our experiences and, like I just mentioned, about culture and our families and the imprinting and beliefs that we take on that aren't even ours, right?
Mhm.
And there's a difference. Like, so much of the sex I had in my late teens and 20s was to be loved, because I was
Mhm.
so insecure. And so I gave myself away constantly in the hopes of being loved, without realizing that my trauma was steering the ship. And so,
Mhm.
of course, when you're first in a relationship, you have all those feel-good hormones, because that's that new love. And so you got the oxytocin and the endorphins and the dopamine, and it's all just surging through your being. And then we get, 9 months, 18 months into a relationship, and that goes away. And so people are like, I want that feeling back, that
Mhm.
first excitement, when you're with somebody.
Yeah.
And so when I started looking at what was I putting the brakes on, because it didn't matter how hard I was putting my foot on the accelerator, whether it was, trying new sex positions, using no toys, wearing the sexy lingerie, my foot was on the brake, so I was just spinning my wheels.
Mm,
Mm.
So when we start to look at what are those things that are actually keeping our foot on the brake, and when that can start to lift and come off, then we can start bringing in what we desire and want based on how we're erotically wired. And we're not all wired the same. And that can look like sexual incompatibility in a relationship, when really there's no such thing. It's actually just really understanding how our systems are wired for pleasure. And then how do we feed that then? And then do we communicate our wants, needs, and desires to our partners?
mhm, mhm, mhm. Can you say more about pathways to self-love? Because I think that it all starts there, doesn't it? It like if we're not accepting of ourselves, if we're not loving ourselves, if we're not in our bodies, if we're not filling our cup, so to speak, or a chalice, then all of the sex toys and techniques and tricks, like you say, it's going to have brakes on it. It's going to be blocked, and we're looking out there for the answer, right? And actually, there's a fundamental shift that needs to come from within. And um, I think sometimes we talk about self-love, and I think we get puzzled looks like, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? How would I actually find self-love? How would that actually look? What's the pathway to that? So could you say more about that?
Yeah. I think it's actually a feeling. It is, I equate it to, for women who have children, this is, that love when you have that baby and you just want to mush them, because you just feel so much love for them. You know that feeling?
Yeah,
Mhm.
It's having that feeling for yourself.
yeah.
It is coming home to your body. It is accepting yourself. It is, Um, I use psycho-spiritual practices to help with integration of charge. It's working with humans that can help you um, get out of your own way
Mm,
and heal your experiences, because you aren't those experiences. And doing loving things for yourself, and typical things we think of with self-love are going for massages and buying flowers and eating healthy, and that is all great, but it is actually like loving on you, lying in bed and touching yourself in the most loving ways, like you would touch a beloved, or like you would touch a child, kissing yourself,
mm,
giving tenders, I love you, appreciations for all the things.
mm.
Like, it is a learning curve.
Mhm.
Well, it's actually a spiral, and it's a continuum. And it's, not learning not to beat yourself up. And so much of it is actually recalibrating your nervous system.
Yes.
Mhm.
Because we've inhaled and absorbed blocks to that self-love, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's a multi-dimensional pathway back to self-love. I think it's embodiment, like you said, it's coming back to the body. It's changing the thoughts and releasing the thoughts and the um we've absorbed some messages about ourselves, what's okay and what's not okay about us, how we meet our needs and how we don't meet our needs, when we're too much and when we're threatening, and all of these ways that we've sort of it's pretzeled us and shaped us into how we show up and in the world and with others, but we've got to find a pathway back to unraveling, releasing, healing, transforming, recognizing, even like even being mindful of where there is something to release.
Yeah. Finding our hell no, finding our hell yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, how many times do we say no?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like somebody should write a book. No is not a dirty word.
Well, and no is a complete sentence.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard that. And I really resonate with the idea that we can get stuck in our trauma until we choose differently and have some self-awareness around, hey, this is how I've done life up to now. It's not getting me that juicy life that I envision for myself. And how do I do things differently? And I think your area of specialty as a coach invites women to explore that and to work on the healing. Healing's a big part of my being on the planet. And I think when people are ready and they want to go there and they have the courage and the willingness to say, ah, I'm ready for a change.
Yeah. And that's really hard for a lot of humans. There are so many humans on our planet who complain about their
Hmm.
sex lives. And then when it comes to actually taking that step into doing something about it, it can be quite challenging.
Yeah. Well, it's typical to say, oh, if only they would do this, or if they
Yeah.
would say that, or how come one of my pet peeves is they should know me by now.
Right.
Like,
And
have you told them?
and how can they know us if we don't even know ourselves? How
Oh
can
yeah.
Yeah.
how come, like, if we can't communicate what we want, what we desire, because we haven't discovered that on our
Yeah.
own bodies with ourselves, how can we possibly expect our partners to know? And I love that you brought that up, Alice, because that is so typical. And that shift in and of itself has been a
Hmm.
game changer in my relationship. If I'm in
Hmm.
that place of projecting everything that's wrong on my partner, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do that, he does this, he does that, ugh, that drives me crazy. And as soon as I turn it back on myself
Hmm.
and start looking at those places within me, it shifts the dynamic. And it only takes one person in a relationship to shift the
Mhm.
relationship.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I've heard it said that the most important relationship to nurture and develop is a relationship with self.
Yeah.
And that's on every aspect. And I love that you are focused on this area of sexuality and sacred intimacy and relationships, because I think that then in turn ripples out to all the areas, right? Whether it's my relationship with money or career or friends, if I'm coming home to self first, that's what comes out of me.
Yeah. And sex and money are so closely related,
Oh yes.
you
Yes, we
know?
had our other illuminators, Jennifer and Brenda. They have their own business called Money and Desire, and they're really. I think Jennifer Thompson reached out to you at some point to talk about her tantric practice, but that's a whole other interview. We're gonna stick with your area. So, if who would you say is your ideal client?
Who would I say is my ideal client? Um, so typically the women that come to me are between 40 and 70,
Mm-hmm.
and they have challenges feeling sexual. Their self-esteem may be low, and they just don't know what they desire, and they feel broken, or they feel like something's wrong with them because they're
Mm-hmm.
not turned on or aroused or desire sex.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's an aspect of them that's just shut down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you think is menopause a time when that heats up for them? They feel lost, they feel disconnected, they feel like I used to know more of myself and now I'm lost because I do hear that a lot.
Yeah, that's part of it. And for some, they just never really were in touch with what their true desires were. They, like earlier in our conversation, went with what they thought it should be because
Yes.
that's how they were taught, right? And
Mm,
we do, and our generation of women lived in the time when it wasn't about our pleasure. It was about the other person's pleasure. So
yes.
about learning, it's really about learning about pleasure, and it's so much to do with reframing what sex is. In our culture, when people think they're having sex, the only thing that comes into that equation is penetration.
Hmm.
Sex is so broad. There's so many ways to be in that relationship of sexuality and eroticism that can have nothing to do with what we think pleasure is, has nothing to do with penetration. Like some humans are wired, like, and I'm wired this way as well. Can have huge energetic orgasms, like multiple orgasms, without even any hands on my body.
Hmm.
Right? There's just so many different ways to experience sex that, because of our culture, is very limited.
Mm-hmm.
So it's awakening the senses. It's exploring pleasure. It's opening up possibilities and creativity. It's listening and responding and receiving and like not just giving in a way that we're focused on something out there
Right.
that we've inherited and absorbed and modeled had modeled for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is about being curious. And
Curiosity.
so being in curiosity and discovery, it's
Discovery.
about
Yeah.
meeting our edges, knowing
Mm.
when, oh, I just need to be with this for a while so my nervous system can acclimate, so I don't blow myself out. So I'm just going to be with
Mhm.
this for a while. I'm going to be with my breath. I'm going to feel the sensations in my body of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think such a big part, and I notice this with my clients, is just the simple fact of having another human, and in this case, me, holding presence and
Mm-hmm.
listening. So many women, just in having that experience, can, because
Yeah.
they feel held in a way that they've never felt held before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the word connection keeps coming up for me as you're speaking, and I'm thinking about connection with self. And I know Gabor Mate talks a lot about that as far as addiction. And a phrase I heard on some talk show was, oh, yeah, the opposite of addiction is connection. I'm like, I don't know if it's an opposite, but I do see that people crave connection on so many levels, the sexual, the emotional, the mental, and the listening is part of that feeling connected. When I sense someone is really deeply listening to me, not from the frame of, oh, I can't wait till they stop talking so I can start talking, but the actual being with that person as they're speaking. to me has been an erotic experience.
Mm.
Because it creates intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very true what you say, Alice. And I
Mm-hmm.
think so much of the scary thing about intimacy is because there is such vulnerability in being intimate. And that
I
can
Mm-hmm.
be
love,
a really, really tender place to visit.
I heard this once, intimacy, into me see, into me see.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And I need to see into me before I can let you see into me.
yeah, exactly. And and there's so much armoring that we have
Yeah.
from our experiences and all the things we talked about before, our belief systems that we've taken on that aren't ours,
Mhm,
fear.
mhm.
Yeah.
I can almost hear, I really believe that when we do our work, that our grandmothers and grandfathers and the guides are celebrating, because I think that there's so much that we've inherited, and there's so many blocks that they had in their development because we didn't have these kinds of conversations. We didn't have this kind of education. We didn't have this kind of openness. They didn't have it. And we're just beginning to embrace on it and open it. So, um, marriage was a transaction. It was for safety. It was for um, security. It was for it was abundance to secure prosperity, right?
We
And
were
to
a
be,
commodity.
yeah, yes.
Mhm.
And so we're still, we have so much work to do in releasing and opening and healing and transforming, and the work that you do is a pathway into that is fairly new, really, in in our cultural sense.
Well, I think it's more freely spoken about or shared. I
Mhm.
think in a way we can look at sex workers that,
Right.
right, there was healing in that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's been around for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really just I don't know, fragmented off, right?
Yeah,
And it was okay over there, hidden sort of out of the way.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
we do have like so much of the work that we do is we are working on the generational trauma and experiences that we've taken on that is actually in our tissue. So there's
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so much about, you know, getting into your body. Like I cannot emphasize the importance of that enough because we can do mindset and emotional clearing, but there's so much that we hold and store in our tissues of our body. And so it's actually getting into those tissues in our cells and releasing those stories and imprints, um,
Mm-hmm.
and giving them the space to move.
Yeah. And I'm reminded that while what's in my body is actually generational. Some of it's not mine, right? I just am carrying it on through my DNA. And I'm also hearkening back to the time where the goddess was worshipped before the advent of Christianity in much of Southern Europe. The goddess was worshipped. So, what we're seeing now is actually divine re empowerment because we were empowered as a species for millennia. And then we went into a cycle of women being suppressed. And it is about the idea of power, power not to be interpreted as a threatening term against men,
Or
but the
over.
entire, or over, yeah, but power with, and how that um, symbiotic relationship actually leads to both people, no matter what kind of relationship they're in, both experiencing power in equal measure is
Mm.
what my altruistic self is always aiming for. It's like I've been in a marriage for 43 years and it's been a huge journey. We've each had our been able to grow and heal trauma from our childhood and past generations and past lives, and to come to this place of we're equal in power, the masculine, the feminine, when either of us are expressing either or both, that's when we're feeling really empowered. And so I keep circling back. I'm making notes here as we're chatting, and I'm thinking about people who've experienced extreme trauma, such as rape and violence. And my heart just aches for them because I know that is such a dark, dark tunnel to come through, and to realize that there is light at the end and there is hope. And I'm just so grateful that there are people like you in this world, Angela, to take them on this journey in a gentle, loving way, that they can have a happy, joyful, well-balanced life. So I'm just wanted to say thank you. Oh, feeling
Aw.
very emotional.
Well, yeah, how powerful it is to return to
Mm,
self-love.
Yeah.
mm,
And I love this piece about empowerment because it's very true. It's like remembering our goddess connection,
Yeah.
mm.
right? Because as much as that generational trauma is in our bodies, there is also the remembering of that connection,
Yes.
right? And to me, when we are nourishing and loving ourselves and opening up, like the vastness of that power that just,
Mm.
Mhm.
right? Like we can,
Mm.
you can feel it, it's palpable.
And it's infinite.
And it's infinite, and it
Mm,
can be scary as shit
Yeah.
to untap it, right? So it's, what is the journey for each individual to come back to that place within themselves, right? And when we heal the generations that came before us, and we heal the generations to come,
mhm.
because we are all connected. Like it is all about love.
Yeah.
I just think that self-love somehow got a bad rap, like as being selfish or something. And yet I just have this image that when we're self-loving and we're filling up our vessel, when we're filling up our chalice, when we're filling up our heart, it's just overflowing with where we want to share that with our children, with our partners, with our colleagues, with the world, right? Like it's overflowing, and it oozes out of us in such beautiful ways for us to share our gifts with others. And this is what the planet needs right now, is for each one of us to have that sense of being lit up and loved up, and sharing that and flowing that out.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think what happens on that journey, the majority of our culture gets so caught up in having to do. I
Mhm.
have to look a certain way, I have to be a certain way, I have to act a certain way in order for me to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can come back to remembering who we are, when we can come back to remembering the love that we are, pleasure that is possible in our lives, whether it be sex or smelling the flower on your walk, like the amount of pleasure that there is no roof or limit to the amount of pleasure. The question becomes, how much pleasure can I handle?
Mm,
And when we can come to that place of remembering within ourselves, it's so much about just being, right? One of my mentors always says, um, and he taught me this, it was unconditional love from me for me, and everyone gets it.
Mm. Mm.
mm.
And I don't have to do anything except for be. And
Yeah.
everybody gets it.
And that's the key to healing the world, really. If we could
That
all, if we
that
could all come from there.
that is the key to healing the world. I truly believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. I can feel that in every cell of my being right now. So, if someone is new to this pathway and wants to know more about a first step to work with you or a first step to opening up more of this, what would you say, Angela?
That they could reach out to me and we could schedule a call and have a conversation to
Mm,
see where they're at and if, we're the right fit for each other. Because everybody's journey is individual.
yes.
And I do work with people in a more VIP way. So it's more of a, 6 months is the minimum because it is about titration. It is about, I love the spaciousness because things are going to appear. Like life is going to life, and that's going to happen on the journey. So yes, there's intentions and goals, and it just would depend on that individual as to what tools and modalities I would bring in.
Mhm.
And do you have a website or an email? How can people get in touch with you?
I do have a website, but it hasn't been updated in a really long time, so it doesn't have all the modalities that I'm trained in.
Yeah,
So the best way would be for people to reach out to me at Angela@angelathurston.com.
Angela@angelathurston.com.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite book that you would recommend? Maybe there was a book that stood out to you on your pathway to self-love and your pathway to healing that.
Oh, gosh, there are just so many books.
So many.
I don't have just one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. There was one that you mentioned about 10 minutes ago. I was trying to remember the name of it.
Oh, Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. Yeah,
Okay.
so she talks about lots of things, but that's where the brakes and the accelerator.
Hmm.
She goes into depth with that.
Hmm. And as you say, life is always lifing, right? And so we all get stuck sometimes. We all find that moment or that time where we're maybe feeling lost. We're feeling like we're, feeling dark. We're having a moment where some kind of curveball has come that has knocked us over. And we always ask this is what do you go to for, is there a favorite song, mantra, quote, practice, tool, anything that you would go to get yourself unstuck in those moments?
Yeah, that's a great inquiry. I think I have many, but the biggest one is first coming in connection with my breath
Mm,
and taking some time and space just to sit, to breathe, to feel my breath in my body, and breathing down into my womb space. Like that is the biggest anchor for me because
mm,
typically if I'm spinning out, I'm not grounded and connected in my body and particularly to my womb.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think I think there also is a misconception out there that once we get to that place of loving ourselves, that we don't ever have those moments of forgetting. And we
yeah,
do.
yeah.
But the more we can remember and the longer we're in that place of remembering the love that we are, the easier it is to come back to it. And those periods of anger or grief or despair um, shorten because we have those pathways created in our systems. I like to look at it as if it's like when you're walking through the woods and it's just all trees and bush. At first it's going to take a while to get through there because you're creating a new path,
Mhm.
right? But the more you walk that path through the woods, the clearer it becomes and the easier the flow is for it. And it's the same with any work that we're doing on ourselves, is that we are creating those new neural pathways of how we be in the world.
Mhm. And I love that you said that you would turn back to your breath and connect with that womb space. I think no matter what's going on, we all have curveballs. We all have times that are rough on the seas. Like right now, it's a blustery day here in Victoria on the harbor, and then the white caps are there, and it's blowing us around a little bit out there. And but it's a return to that. Oh, sweetheart, I'm here. I'm here. And it's when we can come back to self-soothing love and compassion that we find our way to stand back on our feet and figure out the next best step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because then, yeah, if we're not connected to our breath, we can be in our heads or out here and we're just looking at all the what ifs and the possibilities, or we're in the story and the loop of,
Mhm.
feeding our pain body if we've had a painful experience.
Mhm.
But when we're in that story and we just keep on reiterating it over and over and over again, we're actually just creating suffering in our lives,
Mhm.
Yes.
right? Instead of breaking that cycle and actually feeling the pain, like
Mm.
allowing ourselves to feel the pain, like whether that crumples us off the floor or we're thrashing or, whatever it is for our body to emote that energy instead of recycling the story and feeling the
Mhm.
pain that's in our body. And then it just galvanizes and gets more and more deeper and deeper into our tissue
Mhm.
until we can actually allow it to move out,
Mhm.
movement and sound.
Yeah, I always say honor and release. Honor and release, whatever it is.
Mhm. That's beautiful.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there any final words you want to share? Anything you want to share before we close this beautiful time together?
Just deep, deep gratitude for both of you and who you be in the world, what you bring to the world. Thank you for all of your wisdom and gifts that you are sharing, for
Mm.
inviting me into this beautiful conversation.
Well, thank you, Angela. It's been a delight and it's been an education. It's been a time of joyful connection with you and remembering all the beauty that there is available to us. So, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and sharing your pearls of wisdom. And I really encourage all of our viewers who have a spark. It's something that Angela shared, lit a little light inside of you as, oh, or please, please reach out to Angela and just explore who she is, what she has to offer, and be courageous. Be of great courage because the road may be tumultuous and challenging, but I promise you at the end of it, it is so worth it.
Thank you, Alice. And yes, everybody is worth it.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, namaste.
The world is changing, the world's on fire. I wanna do my part to inspire change. I wanna make my home a sanctuary of love and peace and harmony, and be the change I wanna see. The earth is my home, the earth is my mother. We will never have any other to help renew, rebuild, rebirth. A new way to be on earth. I wanna ignite, catalyze, take flight, burn like the sun, dispelling the night. Help humanity find its way back home. I wanna unite, stand and rise, shine bright, bring the truth into the light. Help humanity find its way back home. Come and dance, come and sing, come and pray.